I was very curious about you and Melanie because being with you guys today has been quite an eye-opener, seeing how far back you guys go. I know that you've been in the industry for such a long time, but also seeing you and the people that you started with is really cool. So I wanted to know more about that. Like, how did that happen between you guys?
Well, thank you. It's it's amazing actually when Melanie was saying that here we are so many years later. Because when you start out, it's like people are making history. When you're doing these things, you don't tell yourself that I'm making history. It is when you look back in retrospect that you realize what you are doing. So it goes back to like a few years ago. I think her contribution to us was really great in the sense that if you think of where South Africa was, and it still is there in terms of textiles, and if you think of how the textiles are the backbone of the industry, how as South African designers we would go out there to Fashion Week with fabrics that were quite similar because the market is so limited. We're all buying fabrics from the same place, and for you to go print your own textiles, you would have needed to maybe print no less than 5,000 meters. So to come across somebody like Melanie who could give you your own unique aesthetic was really, really special, as we're all carving our own niches and trying to build our brands and give our brands those unique signatures. So we were introduced through Fashion Week, and that was really amazing because then we were able to share our vision that this is what we want, can you create us these sort of things, and that's exactly what she did. So, and I don't think many designers, when they come into the industry, they realize the importance of textiles. Like for instance, when I travel to Italy, the first thing they will tell you about is textiles. That is really the backbone of the industry. And the work that she's done up until now has been really significant, but there's still so much more that she can teach the new generation and contribute to the industry in terms of giving those unique aesthetics.
And I know that when we talk about the industry and textiles being the backbone of it, with South Africa, when we went to school, what we were learning is that we're still very behind when it comes to textiles, right? And we didn't know about the Melanies of South Africa that were actually pushing it forward, 15, 20 years ago, you know? And I think it speaks to our perseverance because you guys came into an industry that wasn't even established.
Yeah.
And you brought it so far. Because I think for the other work that I've been doing this year, part of my job has now involved like sourcing fabrics and understanding that I can go all around town and then go to Fordsburg and then also go to Durban, and there's just so much access to fabric now.
And also talking about fabrics, I'm sure you'll soon realize that we almost take what we can get.
Yeah.
It's not like you can choose what you want, and that really speaks to the infancy of the industry we're talking about. That our industry is almost 20 years old to speak, whereas if you're talking other countries, like I always go back to Italy because it was very fascinating to go to a place like Biella, where they grow their they grow certain fabrics there because they'll tell you about the water. That's how far they've taken it. They've taken it to science that they grow cashmere there, they grow those kinds of fabrics because they're special. In South Africa, we don't create our own fabrics, but at least now, like you're saying, you've got choices because we are printing on fabric.
Yeah.
Whereas there's still that other side of the business, and that's where people like yourselves, young people, can really make an impact. And there are great opportunities that are largely untapped in terms of creating unique textiles. Like with the project that we've been working on for one of the hotels, one of the struggles has been fabric.
Yeah.
In the sense that you get different dye lots. You go here today, you order 5,000 meters. You come back 2 months later
and it's gone.
It's gone. They're giving you a different dye lot. Try explaining that to your client who doesn't understand what you're talking about.
And they don't want to understand.
They don't want to understand.
That you promised me this color, why can't I have it?
Why can't I have this color? You start speaking dye lots that they really don't
it's
understand.
Lost on them.
They don't understand what you're talking about. So you've experienced all of that, and I think for somebody like you who's interested also on the business side of fashion, these are some of the opportunities that lie in the industry.
Yeah. there's so much, I think, in the industry that, like we're talking about how fashion creates jobs, right? I always love when people ask me, like, why did you even go into fashion? I could talk about how pretty clothes are, and like I've got two answers. Like the one I always say to people that I'm not interested in having a conversation with is I'm vain and I like pretty things, and I leave it at that. But my second answer as to why I love being in the fashion industry is that with fashion, it's not just me. It starts with a designer, but then that designer needs a pattern maker. And from the pattern maker, you need someone who's grading. And from the grader, you need someone who's going to cut. Cutting is a job, did you know?
Very important.
A really important job.
Just explain the entire value chain of fashion.
We're not even done yet. And then from the cutter, it goes into production, the tailors, the seamstresses. And then you've got the merchandisers, the buyers. You've got the people who are doing the runway shows. You get a production team for that too.
Yeah.
And then you need the marketing, like you need the retailers. And after the retailers still, someone needs to go deliver that. So when you look at, and even before the designers, you still look at the manufacturing of the textiles that took place, the haberdashery, your buttons, your zips, your pins, your beadwork, all of that. That's so many people are affected by just someone taking a piece of paper, drawing a garment on it, and saying, I want to make this.
It's one of the things that inspired me actually to get into fashion, because my background was business, but I saw the potential in fashion for two reasons. One was the preservation of culture, and secondly, how it could create jobs. And also, I could not believe how you can buy a fabric for 20 rand a meter, and you can transform it into something that you can sell for thousands, literally. I don't know any other industry where you can do that with a product.
No.
And fashion gives you that, and it is such a pity that not many people are aware. And I'm glad that you've gone now into fashion writing. Because that's what we need. Ella Melanie was asking, what is stopping us from, as a country, from realizing our dreams and aspirations in fashion? I think it is precisely information and storytelling. People need to go and tell the stories of South African fashion. And even a platform like this, the fact that what we have learned collectively and what we have shared, now when it gets told to somebody else, it might spark something and plant a seed in a certain brain, and somebody will be thinking, actually, I want to go and write about the textiles of this country, the history of the textiles. Never mind writing about the collection, never mind writing about who's doing what, just naming the people, and really celebrating and profiling the pioneers, and also the role players, people that make a difference, because that's how the industry can grow.
No, that's absolutely true. And speaking of the growth of the industry, I think one thing that's been so inspiring to me is seeing how young people my age, have been taking on the fashion industry and how we participate in it, especially because we're talking about thrifting and the thrift culture of Johannesburg, South Africa, right? What I've seen is so cool. Like when you asked me, like when Melanie asked me like how I started thrifting, and I said it starts at home basically, right? But it expands past that now, where people are thrifting online. Like people have Instagram stores, and they just post a picture and somebody's thrifting that, and the sustainability that happens to that, because it's not just taking an older garment, like we add value to it, and they sell it, and they're doing such an amazing job.
And remember that the whole thing about business, I know you're interested in the business side of it, it's really about buying low and selling high.
Which is what we're doing.
And a lot of people do not have access to capital. And so if people can start thinking like that, it opens up so many avenues. It's like when you go to the plaza, do you know how much leather comes from Pakistan? And think of also the impact on the environment, in the sense that you don't need to be killing more cows if you really want beautiful leather clothes. Go and just find the amount of leather that's there. And remember, leather is leather. It doesn't lose value.
No, it doesn't. It gains value.
It gains value, and it's only what you can do to it that limits what you can and cannot do.
No, absolutely. That's very true. And I think that when we look at our industry as a whole and we see how it's evolving, I believe, you know how it was when you started off and like coming into it now. And I think I see it from the perspective of someone who's, I won't say new to it because I've been here a little while now. But seeing how when we are new to it, how we're taking on it and how we're going the route of sustainability, and your brand represents sustainability because it's not just about the environment. Sustainability is the culture of heritage, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm quite interested to see how you're going to take that with you with your future plans.
Well, thank you. I mean, with so we're doing Fashion Week again this year, and like we were saying, I think the first Fashion Week I did, you were probably 2 years old. So now, 18 years later, here we are going to do Fashion Week. And as heritage designers and as curators, the source of inspiration is endless. So it is really about us making sure that first it's sustainable, and also how are we making it relevant and modernizing it so that it lives and lives. How, for instance, when we started, South African fashion was a thing that was worn on special occasions. So today, you know, you've lived with me. I don't wear anything other than South African fashion.
True.
So it's not costume wear. It's not something that you know you wear on special occasions. So it's been exciting to see how that is now becoming the norm for a lot of people.
It's true.
And what's exciting about that is that we are creating opportunities. You know, fashion has that kind of role to play where it plays an ambassadorial role. You think of the visitors that come into South Africa. Some of them will only go into these luxury hotels. They won't meet a lot of South African people, but they can get to interact with the culture. So we're very excited about that, how the aesthetic is changing. You look at countries like Ghana, for instance. Who would have thought that fast forward to today, the soccer team, the national soccer team, will have a strip that is representative of the Kente cloth. So even in South Africa, there's still those opportunities. So we've now taken it into the workplace. Now imagine now when we start taking it into the sports field, where it's a South African story, it's a South African narrative. So that's really exciting. And now you think of school uniform.
Yeah.
They've been wearing those checkered clothes for so long. Those checks. It's like, okay, they're great, but there's so much more that could be done.
No, that's very true.
And I think Ghana's leading. They are the first country to use African cloth in school uniform. So there's all these opportunities that is happening that can be presented to our country.
And when you talk about authenticity, right? Something that it's always been weird for me, right? In that I would watch a lot of television because that's my home, that's my family, that's what we do, you know? And when I would see them shooting school kids, you know, in British television and South African television, and I realized that my school uniform looked exactly like the British school uniform. I wore a kilt, you know, an actual kilt. I'm not Scottish, but I wore one. And I'm South African.
Exactly.
It's strange.
Exactly.
It's actually strange. And these are things you never think about when you're growing up. And when you become older and you go back to it, because I was watching the show on Netflix, Dairy Girls, I think, and it's based in, I think, Scotland or Ireland, right? And they wearing the kilt that I was wearing to school. It's
crazy.
It's crazy.
We have so much to share, and like we were saying earlier, for us to really make an impact, we really need to find our authentic voice. Be it, like Mr. M was saying, be it music, be it fashion, be it television, your television viewing. I was part of one of my jobs was the chairperson of the Gauteng Fashion Council, and I sat on one of the platforms I sat in was they would give grants to movie makers, and my thing there was to really try and bring the authenticity and say, listen, can we give somebody an opportunity who is going to shoot around our national symbols? We're going to be shooting in Joburg. Use the Mandela Bridge. That's what authenticity is about. Somebody who can show the union buildings, you know, those kind of landmarks that you don't even need to hear what they say. Just merely looking at it, you can tell that that is South Africa. And these really are things that are needed now. You think of Monday, this coming Monday, where there's a talk of a national shutdown. there's so many conflicting ideas of what must happen, because there are people who are like, no, we need to make a stand. There are people who are like, but you're going to kill jobs.
Yeah.
So it speaks to us not understanding our national agenda.
Yeah.
These are things that, and fashion is great in terms of building that cohesion of having a direction, a national agenda. What's also nice about our clothes in South Africa is that they've got meaning.
Yeah.
You know, you can see if somebody's wearing like a blue shweshwe. Well, in the old, I mean, people now just wear as they like.
True.
But if you go back into research and authenticity, you know, if you were unmarried, you couldn't wear a blue shweshwe or a brown shweshwe. You were only allowed to wear red. Only a married woman would wear shweshwe. The Xhosa pipes that the Xhosa women smoke. You could only start smoking a pipe if you were above a certain age, of childbearing age. You wouldn't just, it was a privilege for you as a woman who's already had the kids, you're now elevated so you can sit and smoke pipe with the men. But obviously that's a different story. But it's all these exciting things that are in a culture that we can send to the rest of the world.
No, that's very true when you talk about how our clothes have meaning, because I think another thing that I really have enjoyed about fashion is how we communicate with it. Because we already know that like 80% of communication takes place non-verbally, right?
Yeah, it's an instant language.
It really is, and our clothes play such a big role in that. And I see it in our cultures. I know when I go home to my family, because we're very cultural, you know, and I know that I dress a certain way when I'm with my family in the Eastern Cape or in Polokwane, because I'm treated a certain way based on how I'm dressed.
Yeah.
So they can tell that, are they talking to a child or are they talking to an adult now? And you're given a different kind of respect when you are dressed a certain way, because your clothes are communicating a message. If I cover my hair or my shoulders, then no one's just going to address me as if I'm a kid. They're going to address me with respect. You know?
And talking about traditional clothing, one of the nice things about authentic South African fashion is that it takes so long to create, and therefore you are also preserving the environment, that you don't need to be producing things constantly. And people also start to value what they have. People would rather have 10 beautiful skirts that they wear than to have 100, because there's just also no time to be. You look at the intricate detail that goes into the clothing. No one is going to have time to sit. You do nothing but create clothes all day long if you wanted to have a dress for each day of the week.
No, that's very true. I mean, we hear a lot of terms, especially around social media today, where people say slow fashion, sustainable fashion, and I'm laughing in African. Like, I am laughing whenever they say things like that, because that's what we've done for ages. It's like, it's such a new concept to the rest of the world. Well, I'll say the Western world, because I think in Eastern and African cultures, we've always done that in our culture. Sustainability, slow fashion, it's what we've done. Like you say, you have that set of garments that you wear, and they're so well made that they last you forever. And speaking of clothing that lasts forever, I remember when I showed you that picture of my mom's SunGoddess items, you know. Like, she wore that on her wedding. And I wear that now. I can wear it now, because she kept it for me.
Wow.
And it's in amazing condition.
That is so beautiful, and thank you also for sending me that picture. And also, like, what's amazing is how, from a style point of view, it's still so relevant to today. And kudos to your mom, great taste. Runs in the family too.
Thank you. I think I couldn't have been luckier in any situation than to be able to learn someone who always inspires.